Calorie density. In this video, we're going to talk about calorie density. Now, calorie density is basically the amount of calories per gram of food. Some food contain lots of calories for a very small quantity. So, this would mean that there are a lot of calories per gram. An example on the right hand side is these Reese's chocolates. They are about 5 calories per gram, which means in 100 grams there's about 500 calories. Then, on the other hand, you have some foods that contain a lot of food for very little calories. An apple is a good example of this. They have just half a calorie per gram, so 100 grams gives you 52 calories. So, when we compare the two, you can see that the Reese's chocolate contains 10 times the amount of calories in the same amount of food. So when your goal is fat loss, it can be useful to focus on eating foods that provide a lot of food in terms of quantity for very little calories. Because this is going to leave you feeling fuller for longer as the volume of food you are eating is higher even though the calorie content is low. So in this example, you'd have to eat a kilo of apples, which is about 10 apples, to get the same amount of calories as you would from just 100 grams of Reese's chocolates. I'm sure you can understand how eating 10 apples is going to leave you feeling fuller for longer and potentially more satisfied than eating just 100 grams of chocolate. It's also going to make it easier to stick to on your daily nutrition targets and reach your goals. If you're trying to gain muscle, the opposite of this can be true, so eating foods that contain a lot of calories in a small amount of foods can be useful for hitting the high calorie daily targets without feeling stuffed and bloated. So let's have a look at how calorie density can affect a meal. We're going to look at a healthy breakfast on the left hand side. We've got some yogurt, some honey, some blueberries and a native green drink, so that comes with about 619 calories. Now, if we swap the yogurt to a 0% yogurt, so it's slightly low calorie, and then we took out the honey but kept the blueberries, and we swapped the naked greens drink with a bulk powder's greens powder, all we've done is swap regular yogurt to 0% yogurt, so a low calorie option. We've taken out the honey and we've kept the blueberries just the same, and then we've just swapped out a high calorie greens drink for a low calorie greens powder. This means there's now 403 calorie difference between these breakfasts, and that's how calorie density can affect your calorie intake. These are pretty much the same breakfast in terms of the amount of food, but the calorie difference is massive. And with this breakfast example, you can see how we consumed a similar amount of food, but the second option has taken up less of your daily calorie budget or your daily calorie target. So it's important to have a look at calorie density. If your goal is fat loss, like I mentioned earlier, it's good to focus on calorie sparse foods. Foods that have a low number of calories per gram. This is going to allow you to eat more while keeping your calorie consumption low. If muscle gain is your goal, it can be useful to focus on foods that are calorie dense. These are foods that have a higher number of calories per gram. This means if you have a high calorie target that sometimes might be difficult to reach, this is going to make it easier to teach you to reach that goal without having to feel stuffed and bloated like you are overfeeding all the time. So, there you can see the importance of not only calories but calorie density. It's always useful to check out how much food you are getting for the amount of calories you're about to consume. This can have a huge effect on whether you succeed or not.